Howdy, howdy, fellow movie watchers, and welcome back for another edition of the Wisco Movie Watchers podcast, brought to you by PTE Creative. As always, we're your hosts, Evan Davies, and our Oscar expert, even though he says he's not an expert, Dylan Davies. And you should know by now with that intro, we are back for another Oscars recap. We are doing the years 2009 of film through 2013. Now,
Yep. Real doozies.
real doozies, apparently. I will say this, ironically that you say real doozies. I, on the other hand, don't have a lot of controversial opinions on this one.
I mean real doozies in the sense that these are like some of the weakest years in terms of the Oscars, in my opinion, I should say. But I think that seems to be like, or I shouldn't say weakest, I should say like most, like as the
Consensus?
kids say now, like mid, you know?
As the kids
It's
say now, mid. Yeah,
um
I would say this is, in reflecting, I even struggled with favorites in a couple years of when we do our just normal pick your favorite movie. There were a couple
sure.
of years that I even went, there's not really much calling to me, where there's a year that I thought, for some reason, I was like, oh, I think that was a good year. And I went back, I was like, no, that's a horrible year for movies for me, where it was a struggle to even pick a favorite movie and be like, yeah, that's my favorite movie of that year. So it's a mixed bag here. And I would say there's a lot of these years in Oscar history throughout that it feels very consensus. Now that could be revisionist history, but it just feels like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. There's no passion behind it though. I just go, yeah, okay, makes sense.
Yeah. It's it's really a mixed bag because you get like there's usually about like 5 or 6 really good movies, but then you also get like kind of just ones that seem to hit a hot point that year, but then are pretty forgettable after that.
I think if we were going to do this like we do every year, I think this period of time, these 5 years in particular, is very much, I feel, a bunch of years where I'm not saying these aren't good films, but many of the best picture winners have little to no staying power whatsoever. And then there's other
I would
movies that
mostly
have
agree.
then there's other movies that have stood the test of time in the same year that aren't even nominated or were nominated, but it was very much like, well, they're here,
Yeah.
but they got invited to the party, but they're not the reason the party's happening, kind of thing. And then those movies outside of winning an Oscar are never spoken about again. There's not a big fan base for them. There's no real calling to be like, oh god, what a great movie. Where half their
Yeah.
competition was very intriguing, inspired people to make art, all kinds of things like that. But
Yeah. So we want to jump right into 2009.
2009, here we go. So I also added the highest grossing film of each year into my notes.
Okay,
So
sure.
2009, to start off this episode with a bang, the highest grossing film of the year is Transformers Revenge of the Fallen.
Yep.
If there were a wall close enough that I could safely bash my head against, I would. What a horrible, horrible fucking movie.
I was
Uh,
gonna say I am not looking forward to that one when we have to watch it.
when you draw 2009 out of our big box office series, I might vomit.
I know. I was like, why couldn't it have been the first one? At least the first one's good.
Yeah, the first one you're like, yeah, it's fun, it's cool, like, all right.
Yeah, exactly.
So notable movies of the time, though. We are nearing the end of the Harry Potter franchise, where we have Harry Potter and Half Blood Prince up. We are in full swing of the Twilight franchise with Twilight New Moon. Avatar is released, but Avatar's year is really 2010. Uh,
Yeah.
Although obviously it's in Oscar nominations for this year, 2010 is
Yes.
really the year of Avatar because it had the exact same box office performance wave that Titanic did.
Yes. I believe it came out on like December 20th or something
It was
like
like
that.
December
Pretty late.
17th. It was really late in the
Yeah.
game. The Hangover is dominating the comedy scene during this time, but you're also getting the start of Star Trek, we're also getting a lot more of the animation deep dives, where you're getting even stuff like monsters versus aliens, Ice Age, Dino the Dinosaurs. However, I would be remiss if I didn't mention a couple movies that are very near and dear for other things. Zombieland, hell yeah. Glorious
Yep.
Bastards, and a film that in Taken, huge cult audience for Taken. And I would be remiss just because part of it was shot in our hometown. It's not a great movie, but Public Enemy starring Johnny
Sure.
Depp.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
was filmed in the town that we grew up in, the town Dylan still lives in, Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So
Yep.
I had to nominate Public Enemies, and that was supposed to be one of those summer but we can bait into Oscar movies, and it did not go the way that they
There was a
thought.
good story there, and they just fucked it up.
Yeah, and they had a cast that you just thought this is a can't miss. Johnny
Yeah.
Depp, Christian Bale, like you just is I believe Marion
Marion
Cotillard.
Cotillard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that was a cast where you just went, "There's no way this isn't gonna get some pub. There's no way," and not so much.
No, not really. Any technical changes you had?
Yes. So now that I don't have I gotta bring up the award winners because I do have some changes as a part.
I got them right here if you need
Okay,
them.
I need both writing categories.
Okay. Original screenplay went to The Hurt Locker,
Uh,
and then
okay.
adapted screenplay went to Precious.
So I will fully admit I have never fully watched either of those movies.
Okay.
So I can't say to speak to the quality, but original screenplay I probably would have went with either Up or Inglorious Bastards over Hurt Locker.
I that's one of my changes is original screenplay and Glorious Bastards.
God, what a good movie! What a movie!
I yeah, I have grown to like The Hurt Locker a lot more than I when I first watched it.
Okay.
Um when I first watched it, I really it just wasn't anything special to me. But now it's like it's more of a like visceral. It gets you in the mindset a lot more of a soldier, and like there's like a tactileness to it.
Okay.
But I I don't the screenplay of it. It's nothing special to me. Whereas like with Quentin Tarantino, you always get at least that's something special with the dialogue.
That's a big thing for me is I think writing a lot of the time unfortunately just goes to a good movie. It doesn't go to something very unique or different that really deserves it because of the writing. And you know, a Tarantino film, everybody knows his process at this point. It's on the page to where people legitimately ask permission if they can change a line or do something. And he's
Yeah,
open to it in the moment, but it's such a precious thing that people need to do it. And I also think Up deserves a lot of credit in that category. I know it's nominated, but I also would have probably went with Up. It's just such a unique, different film, and the writing portion of it, obviously the animation helps. You can animate to make anything what you want it to be. But that
yep,
movie for me wins an Oscar within the first 4 minutes. So
yeah. It's the first animated movie to be nominated for Best Picture since Beauty and the Beast in '91. So
it's an emotional
saying
film.
something, it doesn't live up to those first 5 minutes
No, it
quite quite as much, but it's still like a great film. I still really enjoy it.
Up is tremendous.
Yeah, that the gut punch of the first 5 minutes though is like probably the most incredible 5 minutes of animation you'll ever see.
I know Disney's always killing some family member, but that might be the most ambitious 5 minutes of film Disney's
Yeah.
ever done.
But yeah, I was
To
gonna say it's
start your
not quite
movie,
so heart wrenching usually.
yeah, but to start your movie with, oh my god, what a lovely couple, and just get the knees out from under you and just go, we're gonna wreck your
Yeah,
day, and then we're gonna leave you with this man who has no hope in life, and now he has to find hope. Oh my god.
yeah.
If you don't cry during the first 5 minutes of Up, you're dead inside. Like,
Pretty much, yes.
you're dead inside. I met somebody who said, "Oh, I didn't cry at that at all," and I knew they were being serious, and I just went, I don't know if I should be friends with this person. That's
Yeah,
untrustworthy. That's serial killer behavior right there. And adapted screenplay, I am a huge fan of Up in the Air, so I probably would have went Up in the Air over Precious.
sure.
Uh, I think a lot of the wit of that film comes from the writing, and it's a really believable movie. It's just something that a lot of the times comes through the page and then to the
Hmm.
performance aspect of it. And it's one of those that it's like the one time a George Clooney movie to me is undervalued instead of overvalued.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
And a lot of the times, I like George Clooney as a performer. The second I saw him in Up in the Air, my entire opinion of George Clooney changed. And then I started watching the Ocean's movies and a couple other things. I was like, oh no, I'm just stuck in Batman and Robin world where everything sucks,
Yeah.
right? But having said that, it like the next year is a movie that most people are like, what is this? Or a year from now with George Clooney, and Up in the Air is the one I'm like, anyone gonna give this some pub? It's a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, it does get nominated for Best Picture, so it was recognized.
Yeah,
It's I don't I don't love it as much as you do.
I really do
I
love it.
I think it's like a 7 out of 10 for me. It's a film I do appreciate and enjoy, but it's like there's a movie the same year in education which has a twist that is somewhat similar to the twist in Up in the Air,
Okay,
and I think they handle it much better in an education.
interesting.
And I watched In Education for the first time just like 6 months ago, maybe, and I still think about it like once a week.
Huh? That's impressive.
I I know I think that movie is incredible.
Interesting.
And
Yeah,
the funny thing is, I put off watching that because I was like, "Oh, I'm dreading watching this. Like, it looks so boring."
sure.
But yeah, I
I mean,
really, really
there's
enjoyed
a
that
lot
movie.
of movies like that. Unfortunately, I don't even know what got me to watch Up in the Air. I really don't. Up in the Air
I thought
truly
we
is.
watched that in theaters.
I don't know if we did, and if we did, I don't know why the fuck we'd be there. That is not on brand for any of us, and obviously we were still going heavily to the theater with Dad at the time, and that's not even on brand for Dad. It's just it's just a from outward appearances, Up in
I
the
think
Air is just
I think we saw
a
it on
run of the
Christmas.
mill movie. Maybe
It
it
came
might
out December 4th.
it may have been one of those that we did the triple feature on Christmas where we just skipped from theater to theater to theater, whoever like
Yeah.
wherever open seats. Because we definitely didn't buy one ticket and then stay for two or three movies at a time.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to do that all the time. I just don't have the time anymore. But
Yeah.
I always want to just be like, yeah, they show the seat map, and no one ever walks in to check it. So who cares? Like,
Yeah. Was that the only technical
uh,
changes you got?
I would just a maybe a nom. Not I don't think it's worthy of a win. I do think the cinematography of Watchmen deserves a shout out. I don't think Watchmen's that great of a
Okay,
movie, but
sure.
I think the visual, I think that is where the Zack Snyder style, that's what it's good at, is the cinematography, the visual style of it.
Yeah.
That's where I think his strong suits are. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Zack Snyder on this channel and how we detest him, but yeah,
Yeah.
I would say the cinematography of Watchmen is
Unfortunately,
very cool.
I just don't think any kind of movie like that with that much style probably will ever get nominated in terms of cinematography. Even though it is cinematographers making the nominations,
Yeah,
it's just such strong style never seems to be nominated.
which is
You would
interesting.
think like something like Sin City, which has like probably the most distinct style of any comic book movie.
Yeah,
You would think like that maybe could get a shot, but Yeah.
What's crazy is I
Like,
think a lot of people just believe that. I don't know how it is in the industry, but I think a lot of people just believe, oh, it's all visual effects. It's like, no, there's visual
well,
effects to it. There is, but the way you shoot it is also super important. Because if it's just stagnant and not getting the close ups or the movement or anything of that nature,
right.
then yeah, it's just, if it looks beautiful, it's because special effects did the vast
But
majority of the
it,
work.
yeah, and it should also be pointed out that this year's winner of cinematography is Avatar. 100% visual effects.
Yeah.
Like literally 100%.
That's another reason I was like, hold on, we're going to reward Avatar for cinematography, and we're not even going to nominate Watchmen. And I think Watchmen, visually, in terms of the way it is shot, is more interesting than Avatar. I don't think Avatar. I think Avatar is more
Wouldn't agree.
interesting. I think Avatar is a more interesting movie in general, but I think the way Watchmen very much the look intrigues me. That's what got me to watch the movie in the first place. Was I was just like, oh, it's a comic book movie and it looks like this. I'll try it. You know, because I had never read Watchmen up to that point, so it was an interesting place for me to be in. So those are the technical ones I have, and just because it kind of fits here, they do a tribute to John Hughes in this. Chef kiss to John Hughes. We love John Hughes. What just the voice of a generation in a weird way, and it's
Yeah.
defines an era, and I'm glad they at least did a tribute to him. So it's the only place that really this fits in. But I saw the picture online where they have like all the as many people as they could that were going to come back and honor John Hughes, including like Molly Ringwald and Ali Sheedy, and I was like, that's nice. I'm glad that happened.
Yeah. They don't actually do that often, honestly, for like, like you would think like the icons of cinema you would do that for.
Yeah,
They don't actually do it that often for at the Oscars.
which I think is pretty impressive. Then if you get one,
The most they do is like they give you like a little bit longer of a segment in the in memoriam.
yeah,
That's about all you get normally. Or like Bill Murray came out and did a little bit of a little something special for Harold Ramis.
yes, I do remember. I was
It's
watching
like,
live for that one,
yeah, it's not. They usually don't do it something very long or special. So yeah, it is saying something.
and it truly defines a generation to a degree. Those John Hughes movies of the '80s, and they stand the test of time. That's the crazy part. Is you think a teen movie, really, it defines the teen movie, is what John Hughes does.
Yeah,
Uh, but to have movies set in the '80s and they're very '80s, no one can deny those are some '80s ass movies, but they stand the test of time because there's just something timeless about the way he captures characters
yeah,
and really makes them relatable to people. Or even if it's as silly as Pretty in Pink, you're still like, yeah, no, I get it. It's awesome. Love
yeah.
Pretty in Pink.
And you're still seeing the evolution of all the coming of age movies starting from him. So
Right. Yeah, no, so I thought that was nice.
okay, so the top five categories. So you got director Catherine Bigelow, first female director winning it.
Great.
Actor Jeff Bridges for Crazy Heart. Actress Sandra Bullock finally winning for The Blind Side.
Which also has
Christopher
an
Waltz.
interesting story.
Yes, yes, I was gonna. We'll probably talk about that. Christoph Waltz for Inglorious Bastards, supporting actor, and then Monique for Precious, winning supporting actress. Any changes for you?
I have no changes. I just think the most obviously interesting thing is the woman who finally wins an Oscar also wins a Razzie for Worst Actress of the Year for the exact
Yes,
same
yes,
movie.
she does.
And
Well, it's for All About Steve that she wins the Razzie.
oh yes, yes, yes,
So she
yes.
wins a Razzie and an Oscar in the same year.
Which is
Um,
hilarious.
yeah, because that All About Steve movie, it's like her and Bradley Cooper, right?
Yeah, and she's just like
Thing.
hopelessly in love with him or whatever. I've only
Yeah,
watched the
that movie
trailer to it.
sucked.
Okay,
You
you've
know
seen
it
it?
sucked.
Okay.
Yeah, it's shit.
I refused to watch it. I was like, this looks so
Yeah,
bad.
that's when I was just watching like any movie, and yeah, I remember it being god awful.
So I don't think The Blind Side is worthy of an Oscar win for her. But I don't
I
I don't have a fight with any of the other ones either. Like
oh, I that's one that
who are
I
the nominees in that category?
so the other nominees are Helen Mirren in The Last Station. I haven't seen that. Carey Mulligan in An Education, Cabaret Sidibe in Precious, and Meryl Streep in Julie and Julia.
Haven't seen
So
any of those, so
I did change that one. I would have picked Carey Mulligan in An Education.
clearly.
Like I said, I think about that movie once a week since I watched it 6 months ago. Like, and her performance is why that movie works.
That's impressive then. I'm not usually a Carey
She's
Mulligan fan, so anytime I
no,
see Carey
that's
Mulligan,
the
I just
thing.
go, ugh, okay.
Neither am I. Usually I don't like her that much,
Yeah.
but like she's fantastic in that movie. And she has to be pretty young. I would guess in her if she's not younger than 22, I'd be very surprised. Cuz she's
Sh-
playing a 17-year-old, I believe, in it
Okay.
cuz it's all about her dating like an adult person like in his 30s and she's an
Uh,
underage girl.
gotcha.
It takes place in I think like the 70s in Britain. Uh,
Okay.
yeah. So it's her performance in that. I don't really understand the Sandra Bullock. I think Sandra Bullock is awesome and I love her, but I don't know why this performance is the one
So I
that
will say this. I don't know what the Blind Side definitely had. It was a groundswell movie where out of nowhere it just kind of like
oh yeah.
took the consciousness for a group of people, which I never understood. I watched it and I was like, okay, good story.
Exactly.
And I
It
was
just seemed like
intrigued.
another forgettable sports movie.
Yeah, I was intrigued because of who the main character was. Because at the time, you know, like I had always had a soft spot for the Baltimore Ravens. I loved Ray Lewis. I loved Ed Reed. They draft Michael Orr, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, let me check this out. And I've always loved Sandra Bullock as well. So I have no problem admitting one of my greatest guilty pleasure movies of all time is Miss Congeniality. I fucking love that movie. I have
Yeah,
no
that's a
problem
great
admitting
movie. The first one at least.
it. Yeah, the first one. So I adore that movie, and that's what made me fall in love with Sandra Bullock. So I was like, okay, and that is a also talk about a year for Sandy Bullock. Proposal also comes out this year. Like this is kind of like the revival of Sandra Bullock as a
Oh,
star,
yes. Yeah.
and then she's now kind of faded again. It's kind of strange how her career really much
Yeah.
goes like she goes up, she disappears. She goes up,
Well,
she
the funny thing
disappears.
is, I think like it might have been the following week or like 2 weeks after she wins the Oscar is when it came out that like her husband had been cheating on her.
Oh yeah, because she was married to the
So
motorcycle Jesse James
yeah,
douchebag.
and
Yeah.
when I watched the video knowing that information, you can see that like icy coldness between their relationship. So she already knows that, and it is so weird knowing that and watching it. It was really funny.
Oh yeah. I mean, talk about a resurgence for her. This is the year where she's just doing a ton of shit, and
Yeah,
it's working for her outside of All About Steve.
yeah.
Yeah, The Blind
I
Side.
mean,
I
she
don't get it. I don't get it in that one.
great in the movie. Like it
Yeah,
is a great performance, but I just don't see like it is just another like kind of I guess the performance is good is a great performance, but the movie overall isn't all that
I
great.
guess, but I don't know what about their performance puts it over the top. But then I also look at I haven't seen any of the other performances, so I'm not gonna sit here and be like it was so much worse than Helen Mirren. I'm like I don't know, I didn't see
Yeah,
Helen
that's
Mirren,
true.
you know.
I haven't seen I haven't seen the Julie and Julia or The Last Station. So I haven't seen two of the other ones.
Julian
So
Julia and Julia or Julie and Julia is also one of the classic. Meryl Streep's in it. I ain't watching it
yeah. Yeah.
because because
That would fall under that
this
category.
this was 1,000% a couple years from now, in terms of this age, is when when the ultimate hype of Meryl Streep's in a movie must be amazing just enormously pissed me off. But this is definitely the after The Devil Wears Prada. I don't know what it is about our culture. They just said it became like it. She, I know how good Meryl Streep is, and I've seen her in a lot of stuff that I actually
You-
really enjoy her.
Yes.
And I know I have an irrational just no. In a lot of the movies she now makes, I'm usually just not intrigued. But she has a Tom Brady-ness about her in culture, not necessarily her personality, but her in culture, where because they've done so much quality work that the public treats them as like infallible. Like, well, they must be the greatest
Sure.
because they're the greatest. You're like, no, like,
Well, I was gonna say to defend her a little bit, I do think her performance in Sophie's Choice probably is like the greatest performance I've ever seen by an actress. So it is like it,
I'm not.
she is like undeniably great.
I'm not even disputing that she's undeniably great, but this was definitely the time in which it was just, well, she's the goat, and you're like, okay,
It is a little annoying that she constantly gets nominations.
and a lot. There's a lot of times it feels like she gets a nomination because she's her, not necessarily. Because then there's other years where these other people poke in, and you're like, how the fuck did they get in? I didn't even know that movie came out. I didn't even know what that movie is. And
For sure.
then there's a couple performances that you're like, God, I think they got a chance. And then it's always like, and
Yeah.
Meryl Streep and blah blah blah, and you're like, how the fuck does she keep getting
Yeah.
these nominations over other people? And the biggest year we will cover in the next episode is Into the Woods. I will not go on my full on rant,
Oh,
but that one, that was the time I just went, I have no faith in any of you motherfuckers ever.
I
Fuck all of
fully
you.
agree with that.
I
I
fuck.
fully agree with that.
That one was the one I just went, I'm done. But we'll move on from we'll move on from that rant.
Um and then I also just wanted to point out Christoph Waltz in Inglorious Bastards. You get 2007 with Javier Bardem, 2008 Heath Ledger, and then Christoph Waltz in 2009. It's like three of the greatest movie villains
Ever.
ever. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Just back to back to back. And it's all supporting actor winners. It's so great.
God,
The
Bland, dude,
one I
Hans
would say,
Blanda. God damn, that's good.
the one thing I will say about director is I actually do think James Cameron has an argument for why he should win. I'm glad he didn't. But to see where movies have gone since 2009 with like all the virtual production and like where you can see like on set the making of the movie as you're doing it, like where you can see the virtual characters as you're doing it on set,
Yeah.
like real time. I think you could argue like his technical advancement in terms of cinema probably is the launching point for where cinema is now. I'm
Yes.
glad he didn't win because it's not the way I want movies to go really. I like more real grounded aspects of movies now. Like I'm every year I find myself leaning more and more away from that kind of filmmaking. So
I think
I'm
it's
glad he
I
didn't.
think it's really tough, and I think that's another reason why we'll talk about him in the next year. So I won't go into full like why people are always intrigued by a Christopher Nolan movie because they know as much of practical effects that can be used are used, and he tries to stay away
Sure. Yeah.
from the visual effects as much as possible. And I think it's such like a catch 22 or the double edged sword classic because I've watched, I love Light and Magic, and anyone who hasn't seen Light and Magic, the documentary series on Disney Plus, go watch it. It's so inspiring to watch, and it really gives you a great history of visual effects throughout movie making. And I think it's so tough because all these wildest dreams that we could never imagine, we can do at the drop of a dime now in movies. To the
Exactly.
point where Mandalorian is shot where they just project the screen around them.
Yeah.
And to think that that's even possible on a television budget and a television schedule, nonetheless, is insane. And that's awesome that that's how much film has advanced. But at the same time, you're right. It does suck that you're just like, well, I need this, and that. Okay, it's done. And you're like, we're not even going to discuss maybe using props master or a Rick Baker
Yeah.
or someone of that nature who's going to come through and or Stan Winston back in the day who's going to come and make these amazing visuals, but they're practical. And there is something about it where the tangibility when it's lost. It's another reason I actually like Up in the Air so much is I think it holds up really well is because it's a modern issue that we're all still dealing with very much so in that film.
Yeah, sure.
And so it sucks because movies can be made so much more efficiently, so much faster, but yet some of the magic is lost because we've gained so much magic in a different way. It's very strange.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. And then the other thing about the director award that I wanted to point out, the seating arrangement, whoever the Oscar producer was this year, is so fucking funny and so like like they have like the greatest sense of humor because they have Catherine Bigelow sitting on the aisle seat, and then literally in the next row is James Cameron in the next aisle seat.
Ooh,
And obviously those two are exes. They used to be married back in the 90s.
yeah.
So it's just hilarious.
And they're competing, and
Yes.
James Cameron.
But I also have to point out, like, James Cameron either one is a better person than I thought he was, or two has the biggest fucking ego ever that he actually thinks he can win. Because I would have thought like he would put up a big stink and be like, "No, I'm not gonna sit here like directly behind the person who I think is gonna win." Because Catherine Bigelow had, let me see here, she had won. I'm just making sure. Okay, so the only award she had lost to James Cameron in the whole award season was the Golden Globe. But everything else she had swept. So it's like, yeah, it's pretty fairly certain that she's gonna win the Oscar. So it's like, I don't. It's just so funny that like James Cameron would just be like, either A, he's so confident that he's still gonna win the Oscar, or B, like,
He actually is a better person than we give him credit for.
yes, be
Be-
happy for her.
because also, I know we said this in the past. Avatar is the movie that I just I that was one of the biggest examples where everyone's like, "What a great movie!" And I went,
Its visual style I really, really love, but yeah, the story itself is like, eh,
very much
fine.
so. And this is Avatar is the ultimate excuse for the ultimate self fart sniffer to really just inhale on those farts. Like
Yeah,
this James Cameron was already like,
I do.
oh my
One thing,
brilliance, but this one specifically, I'm like, oh my god.
one thing I do really love though about James Cameron is like, as someone who like really loves wildlife and stuff, he is like someone who loves, planet Earth, loves wildlife, he loves, like conservation and stuff. So I like that he's pushing those things. It's
Yeah,
just
that's the thing
a
is
little heavy-handed at times.
little, a little.
Yeah.
That's the thing is, I don't recall a movie that I've seen him make that I dislike. So I'm not sitting here like I'm not crazy about Avatar. I think it's fine. But I'm not gonna sit here and be like, I hate that movie. I'm just like, okay, it's really visually impressive. I think it's really cool visuals of it, but I think the story is lackluster at best. But and the
Yeah.
vast majority of the acting, I'm like, okay, like
Yeah.
okay. But it's just one of those that it's tough because James Cameron feels like the Bono of film. Like the things that he champions, the things that he tells are all things I really buy into and
Yeah,
believe.
they're
Like,
all right on.
and yet, just because he's always so egotistical and just sniffing his own farts all the time, you just go, "Oh,
Yeah,
Cameron,"
he's a little self-righteous. Yeah,
and you're just like, "God damn, dude!" Like,
yeah. Also about Catherine Bigelow's speech, it's a little boring. Like, I actually really respected it because, like, you would think, like, as like the first woman director to win, you would expect like this big, like, historic speech.
sure,
If she doesn't nail that, like, that could easily become like a meme
yeah,
quickly, very quickly.
yeah,
And I'm glad she just avoided it completely and just did like a basic, pretty much a basic just Oscar speech where she's just thanking everyone who worked on the movie. Yeah, so she just avoids that altogether because to put the weight of that moment on someone is like completely unfair, and to put it on her shoulders is like, I'm glad she just avoided it altogether.
yeah. I think it's always tough because I just always remember when Halle Berry wins. And it's tough to watch that speech because she's like super
Yeah,
overcome with
exactly.
emotion. And then you get the historical weight on top of the fact that you're getting the greatest achievement you've ever had in your career. And it's tough because everyone watches it because it's history. It's definitely one of the top five when people are going to go back and watch a speech of some kind. Go back and watch hers. And it's tough because it's like almost uncomfortable. You're just like, this woman is like hyperventilating because she's just gotten the honor of a lifetime in her field, and she has
Yeah.
the incredible weight of being the first black woman to win. And then everyone's like, "Oh my god, history! This is amazing!" And it's just like this speech is rough because she's just like hyperventilating. And yeah, I think there's something to it. And also, this was a couple years before the culture that we live in now really manifests. Where
It's true.
if
That's very true.
if a history breaking moment happens, the general public not only wants but demands that that is not only mentioned but the biggest impact, to where
Yeah.
her achievement with the film would be secondary to being, well, she's a woman and she won.
Mhm.
And that's never supposed to be the goal, and that's not the goal of the entire, whatever movement you want to say, Me Too, feminist movement, just art
Yeah.
in general. That's not the fucking point. The point is someone made something that was so great that they were given the honor for it, right? But we don't,
Yeah.
that this was a couple of years before the vast majority of people would be like, I can't believe she wouldn't even mention that. Like, man, it's like, it's her achievement. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
Just
exactly. And so she had there'd only been 3 nominations before her in 76, 93, and '03. And then since then, there's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nominations since her, and 2 of them have won. So progress, a little bit.
we're it's getting better. It's not good
Yeah.
enough, but it's getting better.
Yes. So jumping into Best Picture, Hurt Locker obviously won, and then other nominations: Avatar, District 9, Precious, The Blind Side, An Education, A Serious Man, Up in the Air, and Up.
So just to really hit home last episode, go watch it or listen wherever you are. This is called the Dark Knight Revisionist History category, since now there are 10 and not 5. But whatever, not good. This is definitely the makeup year where they're like, we can't have this happen again.
Oh, also, I wanted to point out when they announce Best Picture this year, Tom Hanks announces it. He literally walks on stage. There's literally no pomp and circumstance at all. He just goes, he's like, he walks on stage, rips open the card. He's like, there hasn't been 10 Best Picture nominees since 1943 when Casablanca won. And the Best Picture goes to, and that's all he says. Like, there's no pomp and circumstance at all. It's great.
It's hilarious.
There's also like this weird kind of coincidence where Hurt Locker's the first true war movie to win since Schindler's List, which was a black and white movie war picture, and then the last thing that won Best Picture with 10 nominees was Casablanca, which was a World War II black and white movie.
Ah,
So,
interesting.
weird
I
circumstance.
mean, Casablanca, it's one of my top 10 favorite films of all time. I adore Casablanca. So anytime we can talk Casablanca, I'm happy. But yeah, no, again, I haven't seen many of the Best Picture nominees there. Of the ones you mentioned, I know I've seen Up in the Air, Up, and Inglorious Bastards. So those are the ones that I would choose.
You
But
haven't seen District 9?
oh, I'm sorry, I have seen District 9. I was a
Okay, I was
little
gonna say.
flabbergasted that I remember. I was a little flabbergasted when I looked and I went, "Huh, District 9 got a nom. Okay." I wasn't mad, but I was just like, "Okay."
Yeah. That's one that, like, everyone's forgotten about, I feel like. No one remembers District 9.
It's certainly a movie in which if you've seen it and it gets brought up in conversation, you go, "Oh, damn, yeah, that's a good movie." That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
District 9, also known as
Um,
what was supposed to be Halo.
oh,
That was all about the development of Halo, and then they kind of pivoted into District 9.
well, that's, in terms of style, that would have been bonkers. Those two seem completely, like incongruous.
Yeah, it was one of, I believe it was one of the first attempts where they're like, this Halo franchise is way too popular. And admittedly, the story of Halo, when you just break it down, is inherently very cinematic and very cool, and goes well with
Yeah,
with the
but,
idea
like,
of a movie
the
format.
style of District 9 is so gritty and handheld, and that's not what screams Halo to me.
Yeah, I know, but I believe it's one of the first pivots where they're trying to really make Halo, and then it just then the director's like, "This ain't working. Let's do something else," and they make District 9. No, I don't really have a dog in that fight. I would probably, of the ones I would probably go Inglorious Bastards. If for nothing else, you get to see Hitler die, and that's always fun.
That's my that's my change. I put Inglorious Bastards winning Best Picture, and then I also took out The Blind Side and put in Crazy Heart, which I just think is a better movie overall. But yeah,
Fair enough.
no huge like. Also, I think in education, again, I'll just say it. I think it's like a runner up if there was one
Okay.
that you could give. Um. Oh, and real quick, I forgot to mention in supporting actor, a little quick shout out that it would have been cool to see a nomination for Zach Galifianakis in The Hangover.
I was gonna
Would
say
have been nice to see.
I almost said a nom for writing for The Hangover would have been pretty cool. I think that's a pretty well written movie as well.
Well, the Hangover won Best Comedy or Musical at Golden Globes,
I mean, it's a
which was
good.
weird.
The thing is I we just rewatched it. Ab and I kind of had like a time capsule night about a month and a half ago, where in one night we watched The Hangover, and all the music was just kind of bringing me back to this period in life where it's the end of high school and all this kind of stuff. Then we watched Superbad, and I was even happier, and I was like, God damn, I forgot how much when we were watching The Hangover. It's like, God damn, I forgot how good this movie is. Like, it's a
Hmm.
damn good movie. Also, I also forgot technical category shout out X-Men Origins Wolverine. Such good special effects.
Oh yeah.
Gotta bring that one up. No, but that's clearly a joke. Yeah, I don't have a lot of
Also,
beef here with anything.
I have one more thing for 2009. I didn't know they did this, so I just figured this out. The BAFTAs give out a award for the Rising Star. So you can guess. There's 5 people that get nominated, and you can guess who won. But your nominations are Carrie Mulligan, Kristen Stewart, Jesse Eisenberg, Nicholas Holt, and Tahar Rahim. You know who Tahar Rahim is?
Not off the top of my head.
Madam Web villain. But he was also in A Prophet, which is like I think it's a French movie. I want to say I think it's nominated in 2009 for foreign language film.
If you tell me he
But
won, I will lose my shit.
I'll give you a hint. It's not him.
I mean, I would assume it's Carey Mulligan for her role in The Education, but is it Kristen Stewart?
It is Kristen Stewart.
Oh my god.
But I mean, other that's a pretty solid like 5, I would
Yeah,
say.
Nicholas Holt is in that category, and he's always fun and happy and
I
good to
will
work
say,
with. But
I wrote it down for each year we're gonna cover. BAFTA's they got a pretty good track record of like saying
predicting
like
wins.
yeah, predicting like not predicting wins always, but predicting like rising stars. Pretty good.
Okay, I mean, here's the thing. I think Kristen Stewart is not good, and I don't think that's a controversial opinion. And
Put in the right situation, I think she is good. She's just not good in like bigger
I just,
bigger movies.
I have legitimately never seen a movie with Kristen Stewart in it where I went, it's a good actress. Never. Not
Oh,
once.
there's a movie called Spencer that came out 2 years ago or last year, where she plays Princess Diana. She's good in that.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
But yeah, like she needs to be in like a smaller movie.
Yeah, and all of her exposure comes in these big movies that. So I'm proud to say I've never watched a Twilight film, never will watch a Twilight film. I abandoned my friends in the same household and didn't watch Twilight when they tried to put it on and just say like, see, and they're like, I was like, what are you putting on? They're like, and it was back when you had to do DVDs and exchange a disc,
Mhm.
and I was in my friend's house and I went upstairs and talked to her dad for 2 hours and watched TV with him instead of watch Twilight. So I was like, I'm not watching this
I'll
shit.
defend the first Twilight. I think it's solid.
I refuse to watch it, and I'm proud of that fact, and I will
I think it's
never
got
watch it.
some. I think it's got some solid style to it.
Unless we get a groundswell of fans on this show that are just demanding we watch Twilight, your boy is never watching Twilight. So,
I'll watch the first one. I don't want to watch any of the other ones, but
what a bunch of bullshit teenage drivel. And I'm all usually for teenage drivel, but what a bunch of bullshit teenage drivel. All right, well, we'll end with some normality though. Favorite movie of 2009.
um, oh yeah, I forgot about that. I would probably say probably Inglorious Bastards.
Yeah, I got two here because it's really about sensibility. Up in the Air, obviously, is probably something someone would have predicted from listening to the last 40 minutes of this show. But Zombieland is definitely in that category as
Yeah,
well. It's Zombieland or Up in the Air, and it depends on what I'm into in the day.
I would like to say Half Blood Prince, but it's like one of the weaker movies to me, unfortunately.
It's the start of way cooler moments.
It's my favorite book of the series, but it's like one of my least favorite movies.
But yeah,
Sucks.
they take out the whole battle at the end, so then they're saving it for the next year. But yeah,
Yeah.
I get that. That's it's interesting nonetheless. But that has been 2009, and we're going to scurry on over to 2010 in a second.